So, comorbidities, what happens, what are linked, what are not linked. If you look at the official assessments, diagnosis, you cannot have autism and ADHD. You can't have another neurodivergence and ADHD.
Which is hilarious because a lot of our students do.
Yeah.
Paperwork-wise.
Theoretically, according to all the pieces of paper, that doesn't happen. They now know that it can happen, especially when they started medicating ADHD people, they suddenly become autistic. So, there's lots of comorbidities, things that go along together. Anxiety is huge. You can imagine we're dealing with all this stuff in our brains and all these voices, and we don't know which voice, and we replay things over in our heads. We're quite impulsive. We will say things that we shouldn't have said, and we overshare, and then I will relive that moment for the rest of my life. Every now and then, if one of my voices has got nothing to do, oh, do you remember when you said that? And it's like, so anxiety is about 40% is the highest, is probably higher if I'm honest. Autism, if you've got ADHD, you are 20 times more likely to also have all the traits to get an autism diagnosis than your normal neurotypical. So they do go hand in hand, and a lot of the things and the behaviours that you're looking for ADHD are also autistic traits. So it's kind of where are you going to land with your primary diagnosis?
And sometimes it depends on your specialist. If your specialist is an ADHD specialist, they're going to diagnose that way, and sometimes it will be autism, and sometimes it's where your school decides that your child might be. They kind of go, we think they're a bit autistic.
Bipolar, this was an interesting statistic, and we looked more into it of was it the people with bipolar who are being diagnosed with ADHD or the ADHD who is then being diagnosed with bipolar. It wasn't clear in the statistics, and I couldn't get to the bottom of it. Depression, huge, because we get frustrated, we get overwhelmed, and we get tired quick, but we are trying our best to fit in with you and live in a neurotypical world. So we are constantly adapting, which takes so much energy to give you the person that you want standing in front of you. And over time, that can very easily, going into being run down, going into overwhelm, goes into depression. So it's watching your ADHD. Are they getting too overwhelmed all the time? Because depression is your next step. Learning difficulties, it's huge. 50% of people with ADHD will have a learning difficulty. Now, this could be processing. This could be such a simple thing as you need to give them a couple of minutes more processing time when you ask them a question. But it could be dyslexia, it could be auditory memory, it could be lots of different aspects, but 50% of the ADHD students sitting in front of you are going to need a reasonable adjustment in some way, be big, be small. And other learning disabilities are in there as well, so that's up to 60%. So it generally is processing because our brains are going so fast. We're missing information, it's taking us longer to process everything because we've got everything coming at us. But there are lots of different things. So lots of people say, my primary diagnosis is ADHD, but there's probably something else going on in the background there as well.
Yeah, and when we work with our students, we quite often will focus on what we think is their primary, and that's what we get. We know that they might have lots of different diagnoses, but it's the one that gives them the most stress, the one that kind of maybe impacts their day on a regular basis. So we run a provision, or our colleague Jenny runs a provision just next door to my base room, which is focused on mental health. A lot of the young people in there have ADHD and autism. But their biggest challenge on the day-to-day is their mental health. So it might be suicide ideation, things like that. They will still have the same diagnoses, but the biggest thing that they're challenged with is that.
Deal with what is presenting to you. Mm-hmm. Would be my biggest piece of advice. ADHD is huge. We're going to have a look at executive functioning in a minute, but deal with the thing that is impacting you and impacting them.
Yeah.
Rather than, oh, you have ADHD, this is what I do.
And be mindful that sometimes, and particularly in the way that the education system is set up in the UK, if a young person has a diagnosis that means that they're going to have an education, health and care plan, which is the old statement for anyone that remembers those days, but it's the legal document that means that this young person needs further support in education up to further education, which is where we are at college. Sometimes parents, they know they've got these other diagnoses, but they're like, well, I've got the legal document that protects my child, that ensures that they get the support that they need. Why am I going to pursue other diagnoses? It can become a bit like a label game. Who's got the most Post-it notes with the most things on? It really, the amount of times young people have come in and told us that they've been diagnosed with autism, and we go, oh, we thought you were. Because we just deal with what's in front of us. And a lot of our young people, they've got their paperwork. We just deal with that. So, yeah.